Welcome to the Ask Brien podcast radio show, where you'll hear from some of the most successful founders and CEOs of businesses and startups, sharing their best advice for success and even some stories on how their mistakes actually make them even more successful. Now, here are your hosts, Brien and Traci.
Welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220, 98.1 FM from Santa Clarita, California, Los Angeles County. So each week we have a show that we discuss with business owners or startups or people that have actually can do something to help businesses or startups each week. And the show is Ask Brien, and it's spelled with an E. And every week we go through a little bit of a shtick here of why we're spelling Brien with an E, because we always said that, when we were kids, Brien was spelled B-R-Y-A-N or B-R-I-A-N. Why in the world did you pick B-R-I-N? Although I think it's a great branding concept because nobody does spell it with an E, except the, name is O'Brien from, maybe you went to a pub in Ireland or O'Brien's out here. There's a lot of O'Briens, but not people spelling their name Brien with an E. So, I don't know, what are you now, an assistant engineer or a supervising engineer? What is your role now, Patrick?
I'm an engineer.
You're an executive engineer. Come on, don't be so humble.
I am an executive engineer, yes.
Is that why he just sits there and Emily does all the work?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's why we have Emily, so he could be the executive with an E.
Exactly. Executive with an E, and my protege, who also starts with an E, Emily.
And what exactly is your role here, Patrick?
I am supervising.
I thought you were head doofus, but okay.
That's not kind. That is not kind.
Well, the audience would like to know, especially our guest who hasn't listened to our show, may never listen to it again, but he would like to know why we're spelling the name with an E, and what does the E signify?
So there's a number of words that are almost like a theme for the Ask Brien show that all start with an E. One of them happens to be empathy, and he was not being very empathetic to...
What does that word mean?
When you put yourself in other people's shoes. Not literally, figuratively.
So if my foot's bigger than yours, how would that work? I
said figuratively, not literally. Already covered that one.
Nobody wants to be in your stinky shoes anyway.
I agree with that.
But nobody could fit in my shoes, especially with my head.
I'm a size 13, personally. But anyways, there is experience because everybody on the Ask Brien show is very experienced. Outside of that, we have experts.
How many years experience does Emily have?
Emily is going on at least a good couple months of experience.
Well, just because you said everybody had so much experience, so.
Well, you gotta learn. You gotta learn somehow.
Now, do not start on Emily. That is so unfair. She's doing an excellent job.
She can definitely give it. I've done that before, so no big deal there. She can definitely stand on her own.
But her executive engineer is training her in a really extraordinary way.
Yes, she sits there and reads his iPhone all the show. Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Well, that's our fault because we're not keeping her interested.
I'm talking about the executive engineer, while the executive engineer is just sitting there.
I am currently writing articles, sir.
So you're doing double work?
Yep.
And getting paid for both?
He works for a radio station. Of course he's doing double work.
Gotta be multifaceted.
How does he know? How do we know it's for our station, not some secondary job or a side hustle?
Regardless, he probably still has to have 3 jobs.
Gotta be multifaceted, folks.
Well, what are the other reasons?
Anyways, other reasons, there's experts, because everybody that's on the Ask Brien show is an expert in their field.
How do you become an expert?
You have to have at least 10,000 hours towards whatever you are working towards.
And how do you calculate 10,000?
Okay, now you're giving me math. I don't know. I just know it's 10,000 hours. I don't know how many times.
40 hours a week for 5 years.
There we go.
Thank you. At least somebody listens.
Math is my worst subject. You're giving me math. Yikes. Anyways, outside of that, we have... Well, he wasn't being empathetic. We have experience, experts. We have 2 of his favorites is excitement and...
enthusiasm!
There we go.
Ouch.
Yeah, ouch indeed. Traci, am I missing some? Because I feel like I'm missing some.
What my favorite is always estrogen.
Well, that's
Indeed.
not part of our show, but he missed the biggest one, which we introduced a few weeks ago, and he just can't get
Education.
it. Thank you.
Yes, of course. But, now that I have a female cohort in the mix, I'm just saying.
Well, that has nothing to do with the show, but the fact of the matter is that our show tries to educate people, and that's why education really, really, really should be the number one.
And enlighten.
What are we, a spiritual show too?
I don't know. I mean, we provide ahas and takeaways, and we enlighten people to the challenges and successes of entrepreneurship.
Sounds a little bit too far stretched. Anyway, without any further ado,
ADIEU.
and why do I like that word?
Because every single letter minus the D is a vowel.
Wow.
Poor Patty. You just sound so defeated.
Well, and he has no enthusiasm and not excitement. And,
None.
and-
I'm
and
starting to
that
really
means-
worry about him.
Well, that's because he's sitting on his phone playing, the next Donkey Kong or whatever game he's playing.
Yeah, I think getting an assistant has really changed your level of enthusiasm, I have to say.
I think it's a fact. Anyway, without any further ado, we have a great guest. His name is James Renzas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So a couple questions we have. The audience would like to know a little bit about your background. So currently you have a company called the RSH Group. Is that your company, or are you just one of the people that work there, or what's your role at that company currently?
No, I started that company in 2002. I was the practice leader for Arthur Andersen before that, and then before that for KPMG. So I worked for large, professional consulting companies before that. And then when Andersen basically ceased to exist in 2002 as a result of
Tax issues.
the Enron situation. Yeah, we call it E-Day. That's when I formed my own company and started, doing this on our own for since then.
Well, we're going to take that, and Patrick, did you listen to that? E-Day. So in addition to the education, now we're going to have E-Day. That's why people, E-Day is very good. It was Enron, which is we won't get into that because if we did, we could have a whole 3-show episode on Enron and what went wrong. Anyway, so you worked for these two companies, and as a consultant, was it in the real estate area, or was it some other area?
It was in state and local tax, and I was the practice leader for the what's it called, the credits and incentives practice. So we help companies negotiate incentives and then make sure that they take advantage of the tax credits that are out there for expansion and doing business.
So I'm going to get into that a little bit further. But what made you start RSH Group? And are there more than one person involved when you started?
No, RSH stands for Rich, Successful, and Handsome. That's me.
Me too. We're both that.
Wow.
Thank you.
I do work with another company that's based in the Netherlands, and we do work on an international basis. But on a domestic basis, I work as the RSH Group.
And so, how did you decide to start that? I mean, obviously you worked at other companies, and obviously you had to, you had an issue there because Anderson was basically, collapsing like our executive engineer, just out of it. So, what made you start this company?
Well, my biggest client at the time was Lowe's Home Centers. They were all over the place, and they're based in North Carolina. And I called them up and had an offer to either go with another large accounting firm or start my own company. And I said, I like doing business with you guys. I want to keep doing business with you. I have an offer to this other large company. I can go over there, or I can start my own business, which you prefer to do. And they said, we'd rather have you start your own business because of Sarbanes-Oxley requirements. We don't want to have a lot of consultants, that are also on our auditing. And this particular company was their audit as well. So it actually ended up working out great for me because I was able to, continue the business that I was doing with Arthur Andersen and just took that, and grew the company from there.
Well, that's a pretty big account to get. Now, at the time, how big was Lowe's? I mean, obviously it wasn't as big as Home Depot, but it was the second largest retail home construction business, or were there others? I mean, was Home Base around?
No, they were not as big as Depot, but very large. And during that time, as you remember, Lowe's and Home Depot were both on a tear of expansion. So they were approving 10 new stores every month. So, and each new store is probably $20 million. So, it's 200 million stores every month.
That's a lot. People don't know this, but I was an attorney for Homebase back in 1995 in BJ's Wholesale. And
sure.
I don't know if you're aware of Homebase. You probably are. Homebase was very similar to a Home Depot concept and a Lowe's concept. They're very similar. They ended up going out of business at some point, but it was pretty big, at least in the Southern California area. I don't know how big they were nationwide. So what were you doing for Lowe's? You weren't doing the local and sales taxes issues. What were you doing for them?
Okay, so when you establish a new retail facility in many places in the country, what you're doing is you're creating a huge sales tax impact on the community you're working with. And so if a Lowe's might come into a location and create $100 million worth of sales, that would generate in California, $1 million of local sales tax that would go to the community. And communities in California are typically a little stretched when it comes to tax dollars because of Prop 13. They don't get as much in property taxes, so they rely on sales taxes. So there's a tremendous competition between the cities in California and other states to get sales tax generating operations like a Lowe's or an auto dealership or a Costco or somebody like that. That's a huge prize for communities in California. And a lot of times they'll give you a percentage of that sales tax back to help offset the cost of building that facility. So, or make a deal work that normally wouldn't work. So, that's what we were doing is we were going in, and under each time they decided to look at a facility, we would go in and do an analysis, what types of credits and incentives are available in that, so that they take advantage of that before they make a decision and purchase the property or do something that would preclude them from taking advantage of that. So that would go to the CFO, and the CFO would look at that along with what the cost of the real estate is, as well as what the market projection was in terms of how much sales they would be doing in that location. And that would all be boiled down to a return on investment, and they would make a decision based on the highest level of return on investment, which stores got built. So they might be choosing from 30 potential projects, the ones with the highest ROI would be the ones that get funded.
So it could come down to, 2 or 3 communities that all want the Lowe's store, and you're going to go with the locality that you can get the best deal. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, the one that's going to, generate the most return on investment. So either it's a great market and they don't offer many incentives, or it's not such a great market and they need some incentives to boost it up. For example, I think I did one in Bullhead City, Arizona. It's a small market. It's not going to, make it work. So they were good enough to offer some incentives to offset the cost of infrastructure to serve that building.
Well, and the community also, it's not just the sales tax part, right? Isn't it the fact that you're going to employ people there? And so if you're employing people, those stores have like 100 people, no?
Yeah, right. But in California right now, jobs are good, but politicians mostly think about sales tax. They like the taxes. So, particularly because sales taxes are generated from local sales is unrestricted sales, so they can use it any way they want, whereas a lot of other taxes that they levy are already committed to other uses, so they can't play as much with that as they would from the sales tax generated from a Lowe's or another retail facility like that.
Now, the government, can they, I don't want to use the word kickback, but can they give Lowe's, hey, we'll give you $1 million, or how does it work?
Yeah, they can do that. They can do an agreement where this is done a lot in retail, especially large retail generators, and also e-fulfillment centers, where maybe an Amazon or someplace like that, where you're concentrating all the sales tax from a broad area into one location. And the way the tax is, it comes from the location it's sold at. So if it comes out of that location, the locality gets the sales tax, and they're free to do anything they want. So what they typically will do is I've seen, a number of ways. They either put in the infrastructure, that's public infrastructure that can help get that built, like a road or a sewer or something like that to help, maybe put in a parking lot. In some cases, they'll purchase land and then lease it back to the company at a favorable rate. And then finally, they'll actually send them a check every quarter based on how much sales they do. and it could go. I've seen deals go as long as 45, 50 years, and they would get checked for 45, 50 years, and it'd be either 50 to 65% of the local sales tax is generated. So if they do $100 million a year, it's $650,000 a year for maybe 50 years.
Well, it sounds like a pretty good deal to the locality too.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I mean, in the old days, they used to have these towns, right? The company town, and they used to have everything in in that town. So it's kind of an offshoot of that, and that's why I went to the job part. I mean, right now the economy is booming, but I mean, 2008 or something, when we had the big crisis, to be able to build a Lowe store where the unemployment rate is 15% or 10%, which it was back then, that could be a great thing for a community. In addition to getting the sales tax money, so.
Yeah, and a lot of times the communities will put in stipulations, the things that they want to see. Maybe a standalone restaurant out in front of a Lowe's. As one community requested. Another community in Santa Fe, New Mexico, wanted Lowe's to put in a affordable housing, as part of the project. So they get some things that they want as well back that also is helpful to the community.
And are you negotiating with like the mayor, or are you typically negotiating with council people, or just at the real estate boards or whatever, or zoning?
Usually starts out with the economic development people, and you describe what the potential project is, where the location is going to be. Then they'll typically take that to the city council and then draw up an agreement with a real estate attorney that outlines how that program would work. And then they vote on it, and if they vote on it, it becomes an agreement that the city will then sign, and then they manage it for the period of years that the incentive is granted for. So
how do you determine where's a good location? So let's say I wanted to open up a dry cleaner in Anytown, USA. It's a very popular town, by the way, Anytown, USA. So I was just trying to figure out what it's kind of very close to a widget. I'm just trying to figure out what would I want to do to determine where's the best place to locate a dry cleaner.
Well, the first thing you got to look at is who's your customer. What are you looking for in terms of your customer characteristics? Is it is it a professional community that they're going to need a lot of dry cleaning, or are they all pilots? Where they need to have their uniforms done, or cops or firefighters or doctors? Do they have is there the need for the product or the service that you're offering? And then there's a number of demographic sources that you can go to kind of outline where that shopping area is. And then the most important thing is finding a location that actually works for you within that general demographic area. And that really starts with, real estate. You have to find a number of different locations that could potentially service your needs, and then analyze each of those locations to determine what your ROI would be at one location versus the other. So you have to do a market study for each of those particular locations. You have to determine how much that's going to cost you to be in that location, and then what the potential profitability of that location would be. And then you do a decision matrix where you lay out what's the most important factors that you need in each location and weight them in terms of how important they are to your particular needs. And that will give you a score of each location that you're looking at. And then you can start your negotiations on the top 2 or 3 finalists of that, rather than laying out 40 different ones and trying to sort through them. There's a methodology that we use that's fairly standard across the industry that helps you determine from a scientific basis which works best for you.
That was very informative. So how many, you said 3 or 4 finalists, but how many would you start with? 10 you think is too much, or is that a good number, or would you go 7?
Yeah, the way we usually do it is you could start out with literally, our projects we start out with maybe hundreds of potential locations, and then we use, various types of screens. It must be X number of miles from, a hospital, okay? So, the ones that don't meet that criteria, then we screen those out. And then the next criteria, it needs to be at least 5,000 square feet, and we screen out the ones that don't meet that criteria. It needs to, have this type of parking situation or this kind of access. then we screen those out. So you're going through a funneling process where you start with a large number of potential locations, and you funnel it down using these screens to areas that make the most sense, and then you get to a list of 10 what we call semifinalist locations, and then the semifinalist locations you do the market studies on, and then you can score that and determine which of the top 2 or 3 that you should look at.
What's a typical time frame to do that? I mean, is that like a 3-month process?
Normally, well, the projects we work on, we try and do 3 months, although, things are moving pretty fast these days. So, we're doing them in 1 to 2 months now.
And how do you determine the growth rates of communities? What are you using for that? Zoning?
Well, we look at, from a growth rate, we look at population growth, obviously, and spending criteria, but they also look at whether the companies have moved into the area. Are they expanding? They're expanding. How many people will they be adding from a job perspective? So you're looking at what new companies are going to add to the income of the community. Also look at what companies have moved out and how much income you've lost. So we try and look at both sides of those to determine whether or not there's going to be, future growth potential for that community, and if that growth potential actually fits in the kinds of products or service that you're trying to offer.
So what would happen if somebody says, hey, I want to open up a location in XYZville, and you go to XYZville and you go, we had 80,000 people in 2010. Now, with the census, we're down to 40,000, and this is going to end up being a ghost town. So what do? You tell them, this is not a good idea, and let's go to a different city, or do you tell them, or you try to fit within the parameters of what they're trying to do?
Yeah, I'm looking at the situation right now in Tennessee, where it's a small town, and they only added, I think, over the last 10 years, 2,500 people to the whole county, and 50% of those would be in the labor force, roughly. So you're only looking at, maybe 125 people per year being added to the, growth rate of the economic growth rate of the community. So and in the meantime, there's, a lot of other companies that move there that are looking to, tap that community as well. So you're in a situation where, it's going to be, I think, tougher situation to compete over the next 10 years than it has been the last 10 years. So in that case, we just have to look for a different location.
And basically, who's making the determination? Is it the company, like when you worked at Lowe's, right? Are they saying, hey, listen, we need to open up 20 more locations in LA County, and you just figure out the 20 best locations you can think of? Or is it more along the lines, we need to open up 20 locations, you figure out, if it's LA County or Orange County or Riverside or whatever?
Yeah. Usually what happens is the development community is constantly calling, their real estate people and saying, hey, I've got this new project I'm trying to build here in Rialto. Here's the size of the parcel. Here's where it looks. Here's where your site's going to be. Here's what and they constantly have a stream of real estate developers coming to them, proposing projects to them. So they have to basically sort through all those projects and determine which ones make the most sense for them. So that's how it enters the pipeline.
Okay, Traci had some questions regarding the business part of it and how, challenges of that nature. So, Traci, you ready?
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, we were talking about during the break, is some of the grants that are available for businesses, and you were sharing some pretty amazing incentives. So do you want to talk through some of those so people who are listening may be able to take advantage?
Yeah, I just want your listeners to know this is the first time ever that the state of California is offering actual grant money, cash money for companies that are expanding or creating jobs. And there's a new program called California Competes. In the past, it's been only a tax credit program, but this year they're actually offering real cash. And starting in January 3rd through the 24th, they have $120 million of cash that they're looking to give out to California companies that are expanding or investing. And the criteria are you have to meet one of the criteria, either create 500 new full-time jobs in California, make a capital investment of at least $10 million, or if you're going to have a project that's going to take place in an area of high unemployment and or poverty, then that is also eligible. And this is a competitive program. About 20% of the applicants actually get approved, But the application process is not very difficult, and if your listeners wanted to know more about it, I'd be happy to get on the phone with them and outline what the process would be.
How can people reach
that's
you?
amazing.
I'm sorry, Tracy, but I did want. How can people reach you?
You can get me either on my phone number at 949-331-4330, or you can reach me via email at jrenzas@the RSHgroup.com. That's Rich, Successful, and Handsome Group.com.
And that's me, just so everybody knows.
Well, other than being rich, successful, and handsome, what were some of the other things that you attribute your success as an entrepreneur to in being a successful? I know you started out great with securing Lowe's as your first client, but what are some of the things that you can say, because I did this, I am now a successful business owner?
Oh, that's a very good question. But, I've always tried to be very market-facing, to have the market, because in the area I'm in, it's not one that you would normally, think of picking up the phone and asking somebody to do it. So it really has to do more with getting out there, meeting with the various trade organizations that you think make good prospects for you, telling what the benefits of your services are, and then also, of course, always delivering the best quality product or service you possibly can. I'd say the majority of our new business comes from referrals of companies that we've already worked for, or companies that have used us and then have friends that they refer to us. So once you get that referral network going, it's just a steady pipeline of work.
Did you create an organized referral program for your business, or was it just something that happened, like you were saying, friends and family? But, to scale a business, referrals are amazing. I was just curious, though, if you've implemented an actual, official referral program.
No, it just kind of grew organically. To start out with, some clients who were really happy with what we did, and just basically they told their friends, and it spread from there. There's an organization of CEOs that get together, and some of these my former clients were members of that organization, so they're talking with other CEOs, and they all have similar problems, so they all know where to go.
Do you implement any marketing strategies outside of a referral program? Do you leverage LinkedIn, or because you have a pretty niche target audience? I was just curious if you did any other outside marketing.
Yeah, we have a very big LinkedIn group. I call it Site Selection Network. It's got over 5,400, I think, members in that network. So we have that. We do a regular series of webinars on various topics, and we have a mailing list that we send out to prospects that dial in for that. And then also there's about 5,000 economic development organizations around the country, and I work with them very closely so that if they have a company that's looking around and needs some professional assistance, they'll often refer that back to me. So there's three main sources of business we get. We don't do a lot of advertising because when you're doing site selection, it's something that occurs, very infrequently, maybe once every 5 years, something like that. So, it doesn't make sense to actually do a lot of advertising, but keeping your face in front of them, talking to business owners about things that, are important to them. And of course, California business regulations, business climate, cost of doing business, labor availability, and of course incentives, all those things, I think make people's ears perk up. So once they do that, then we can come in and tell them what our experiences are out there. And we're out in the marketplace all the time, so we have a very good hands-on feel for what's going on at any time.
Tracy, you had a question, and I had a question, so you want to go?
I do. So we talked about all the things that contributed to your success as an entrepreneur, but I'd really love to know what challenges that you faced in growing your business and how you overcame them. 2 or 3, 1 or 2.
So there's 3 areas that we use to grow the business, and the first one is during the 2008, particularly downturn when not much was going on, in terms of corporate expansion. cost segregation was a service that we added to our portfolio as a program that we're offering to clients, and cost segregation helps to accelerate depreciation on a federal basis. So if you have, for example, a Starbucks with a water line running to the bathroom, that's depreciated over 39 years. But if you ran that to the barista station, that would be depreciated over 5 years. So not all of companies are depreciating properly, and you can go in and do that if you file with the right forms of the IRS. You can accelerate depreciation and allow you to use your cash a lot faster than you would normally. That we've done probably $100 million worth of savings for clients in the LA basin on that, and that which helped a lot. And then we added new markets. We affiliated with an international company to work on projects for foreign companies that are looking to invest in the U.S. And then finally, we have additional markets that we're looking at to go into with regard to local influencers, people that are looking for different attributes. They want to say they have a successful business in Los Angeles. They want to expand to the East Coast, help them, find that. And so we do work for economic development agencies as well to help them identify, what they should be doing to become more attractive to those kind of companies. So we've tried to branch out and depreciate. I think that's, what you always need to do is continue to grow.
Yeah, those are amazing insights. And we definitely want to talk about how the pandemic has affected your business. Brian, do you want to take that one?
So, I wanted to ask you that specific question twofold. One is, how has COVID affected your client base? Because obviously, with many clients now having their employees work from home, transferring a headquarters office, they may not need the same space that they did before, or maybe they do, and they realize it's going to come back. Those type of issues, retail and everything. And then first answer that question, I have one more follow-up if we get time.
Yeah, COVID has basically affected everything. It's changed everything. Now, before COVID, people didn't have any trouble getting workforce. Now, a lot of workers who have, experienced working from home no longer want to go back to the office or to the warehouse or whatever. I know that I was in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and they told me that 70,000 casino workers are no longer going back to work. They're going to, find a different careers. So it changes the whole outlook of what the labor force would be. When it comes to, tech workforce, there will always been quite a bit of, work from home there, but now you can literally branch out and put people where they can afford to live. One of the problems for Southern California is it's an expensive place to live. Not everybody can afford to live here, and some people want to move to less expensive places like Arizona or New Mexico or Salt Lake City or something like that. Now they can do that and still continue to contribute to companies that are based in California. So it's actually improved the labor force reach for companies, but at the same time it's added some challenges to getting those workers to come into an office or something like that if they need to have those people there.
Is it going to go back? Are people going to go back to the offices? What are the trends saying?
No, I don't think so. I think from what I'm hearing is like you're going to see a portion of those workers come back, but they may not come back, every day. They may come back 2 or 3 days a week and work from home the other days. It's always been, for me, interesting why companies didn't go remote much earlier than they did as a result of COVID. But COVID forced them in the situation where they actually had to look at what the performance was of employees that are working from home, and they found out it was, pretty good. So now people have more confidence that they can work from home, and of course that saves companies a lot of money in real estate.
So we have about 50 seconds left, and the question is the effectiveness of people when they're not in the office. In the old days when I was working, we had a whole team. So we got someone from the marketing, legal, 5 different people, and we could solve a problem pretty quickly. Now you do it with Zoom, and it looks like Brady Bunch, and I'm just trying to figure out, does it work the same way, or do you have to be in somebody's face to get something done?
Different companies have different philosophies about that. I was talking with some of the people over at Genentech, and they feel like they like to get people together because they have the exchange of ideas, the inspiration. That all happens when they're all together, maybe having lunch together or, in a meeting together. So in certain areas, like tech areas, they do like to get people together. On other areas
I don't
where,
mean to interrupt, but we ran out of time. I appreciate your time.
Oh.
We'll have you back. KHS 1229.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Brien radio show. You can listen to us every Thursday on KTHS AM 1220 and FM 98.1 or via Facebook Live or anytime wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit AskBrien.com to join the conversation and ask us your business questions, and we'll answer them on our next episode. That's AskBrien.com.